WNST Towson nonsense and the 44-7 blowout. I keep calling it 44-0 because it just felt that way. And the taking of the knee and the outrage of the fans and Bisciotti and Harbaugh and the injury to Brent Urban. But lo and behold, it is Pittsburgh week here, and that's the reason I blew off the Stones in Barcelona on Wednesday night to come home to watch football, and I thought for sure the Steelers would be 3-0 by the time they got here, and lo and behold, while we were over in London doing all sorts of horrible things, the Steelers were also stubbing their toe. This guy covers the Steelers in all things for Yins and At up there, downtown as the sports director of 93.7, the Fan of KDKA. With Yins and At in Pittsburgh, we welcome Jeff Hathorn, one of our defending champions, back onto the program. You can find him at J Hathorn out on Twitter behind a big red, white, and blue flag and a very, very large football-sized head on a cartoon. Jeff, welcome, man. It's been tumultuous in every market because fans are riled up. People are being heard from, owners are being heard from, owners are taking knees. Stuff is happening, but it all began in London early in the morning, and I'm sure you were up waiting for us to get our asses beat, and we did early in the morning. But our guys took the knee early, 9:30 in the morning, doing it on foreign soil. I'm over there in London. People there are offended. Everybody's outraged. And then the word breaks around halftime that Tomlin's not going to let the guys out of the locker room at all, or that they had agreed to this, and then Villanueva happened. So before we get to football, boy, you guys have had some fun here the last couple of days dealing with this in sports radio as well, right?
Yeah, it's been a little crazy. And, Saturday night, take you through it. Saturday night, the Steelers had a team meeting, as all teams do. They get together, we'll walk through, go over the game plan of last time. And the team got together and they decided, hey, we're going to be unified on this. We don't want some people kneeling, some people standing, and people to feel awkward. So they decided they were going to, what they thought, take themselves out of this by not going on the field at all. So that way you don't see anybody doing anything different. It's one unified group that they're going to stand in the tunnel instead of coming out. They thought that would solve it, but what it did was ended up making it worse because they looked bad for not being out there. Now, then it happened with the Titans and Seahawks where neither team came out there. But to further this, the Steelers have that difference because they have an Army Ranger on their team. And Alejandro Villanueva had agreed to this, but he wanted to be out in front so he could see the flag and put his hand on his heart. So he had talked to the captains of the Steelers and said, hey, I want to be up front with you, and I want to be in view of the flag so I can put my hand on my heart. And he stepped out a minute, and none of the other guys stepped out. Now, Roethlisberger said that there was confusion and there was timing and nobody realized, and that Al didn't realize he was out there. Villanueva feels bad because he feels like he's thrown his team under the bus. But that's the bottom line. I mean, listen, Villanueva, Steeler, Raven, it doesn't matter. The guy's an American hero, and he didn't want to be a part of any of this. He just wants to play football and honor his country. And that's what's kind of been weird about this whole scenario is he's not protesting anything. He's just trying to fulfill his dream, which really is a dream after what he went through in Afghanistan to be playing football. And here we are. He's right in the middle of it, and the Steelers are too.
Well, I know Mike Tomlin's politics, and he certainly was on the left side of the aisle before the election last year and stands there as a man of color, amongst men of color, in a city with a rich football tradition for black and white and Franco Harris and anybody else that came along. If you wore black and gold up there, you can be a hero in Pittsburgh. And the taking of the knee thing is seen as disrespectful to the military, disrespectful to people fighting wars. I don't necessarily think of it in those terms. I think when you kneel before God, you kneel before your Creator, you kneel before in humility. I don't think it's an outwardly disrespectful act to kneel at all. And I'm also a guy that, I can sit here and argue back and forth, and I've heard from the right side, the left side, the white side, the black side, the conservative side, the Democratic side, but the NFL has now been dragged into this. Dude, how many times have people yelled at you or your host, stick to sports, shut up, we don't care about your, we don't want to hear about your politics. Well, that's all out the window. I mean, that's, and I was never a guy that took that without flying a middle finger in the other direction as well, because I am an American and I do have a voice, and I do have, I feel like, a well-educated opinion after 50 years of living here and being a part of so much of this. But people are pissed, and Steelers fans can come down here and get some tickets on the cheap because there are a lot of Ravens fans that are burning Jersey. I mean, people,
same thing.
Yeah,
same thing here.
Yeah.
Same thing here. We've got an older population. So we have people that have served in wars or have that feeling that the anthem is tied to the flag, which is tied to the military, which isn't necessarily what all these players are going through. That's not, they're not trying to disrespect the military. They're trying to protest injustices they see in racial inequality for the most part. So they're caught in the middle of this. There are Steeler fans that are pissed. You always get the ones that are, I'm never going to a game again, but they'll show up the next week.
Of course,
I'm never going to watch again, and they're going to watch.
My dad said he was never going to watch a baseball game after the '81 strike. I mean,
Yep.
I mean,
come back. Here, the problem with what's going on right now, from a pure standpoint, neither of us got into what we do to talk about politics, because there are plenty of opportunities, there are plenty of shows for that, and people come to us for a release. The average Joe wants Sunday or Saturday, if it's college football or whatever it is, when they turn on sports, they want to forget about all the other crap. And when that crosses over, they get ticked because they want something different. And that's where I think we're at with a lot of fans, is they don't want any of this. They want to go have fun and cheer on their team and forget about reality for 3-4 hours. And they're not having that because of the crossover.
Well, sports isn't the great escape anymore when we're building, stadia on the public, dime, which we've done here and you guys have done there. And when when guys run afoul of the law, or when they do something particularly heroic in any way, we do shine a light on all of these athletes, and they are well decorated, well compensated, and the whole notion that we're going to separate politics and sports when the President of the United States is, issuing 15 tweets over the weekend from his gold-plated toilet in the morning, denigrating these men. Look, man, you've been around this a long time. You knew this was going to happen if that happened, and so did Trump, which is why he did it. And that's all well and good. That's his politics. That's the way he's choosing to run our country while given this incredible golden opportunity. But I would say, these are masculine, alpha, in many cases, men of color. In many cases, men of color who came from the struggle. And there's an incredible sense of responsibility for many of these men who've made it out of unfortunate circumstances to look after the people who aren't there anymore, and who are quote unquote left behind. And I just think there's a lot of things going on here that the Mike Tomlins and the John Harbaughs and the Bill Belichicks and the Pete Carrolls, boy, they're all going to have their hands full managing human beings here, I think, in the coming weeks.
And let's be real. I mean, Tomlin's different because he's black. This is different than just a head coach doing this. This is an African-American head coach that's doing this, which makes it different. I think David DeCastro, who, just for people that don't know, is a white guard, said afterwards, listen, I get both sides. I want there to be dialogue, but I just wish there was a better way than doing it during the anthem. And
there's not, though. That at the heart, Jeff, that there's not. There's nothing else they could do that would create this much noise than doing this, which is why they did it. And it's really not why they did it. They did it because the president's an ass and attacked them. And at a rally in Alabama with nothing but white people. And this is their answer. This is the only way these alpha men who are, achievers in their own way and athletes, and every one of them thinks of themselves as a tough guy and a guy that's not going to back down, including Roger Goodell, including Bob Kraft, including the Rooney family and Steve Bisciotti and anybody else. All of these people don't like to look at Donald Trump as being better than them. And any time anybody's denigrated in such a public fashion, I'm not shocked that they've done this. And I don't think anybody should be shocked that when this kind of makeup is backed into the corner, that they're going to come out punching.
So what's the blowback? What I want to see is what's the blowback? What are people really going to do? Because, I didn't vote for Trump. I didn't vote for Hillary. But as I watched that election, I saw Hollywood think that they could convince America to vote for Hillary, and they couldn't. So can the NFL convince these millions of people that worship Donald Trump that this is the right thing, or is it going to be detrimental to the league? I don't know. We'll find. It's going to be interesting to see how these next few weeks play out.
Jeff, you mentioned the issue of a black coach versus a white coach. We have a black superstar here in Ray Lewis, who outside of this city is pretty much reviled, from what I understand, by many, many football fans. And the Hall of Fame next summer will be a great testament to that. We'll find out just where we stand, and clearly a Raven in Cleveland territory and all that stuff, and all the Ray's orange jumpsuit and all the gold suit and the preaching and all of the telling Colin Kaepernick to shut up and then being the first guy on Toonies over in London on Sunday. But there's a statue downtown of him here, right? Now the people here are up in arms about that. They want the statue torn down. I mean, fans are going to make all sorts of outrageous demands because they have this voice in social media. They have a platform on shows like yours to scream and say whatever's on their mind. I don't know that the Steve Bisciottis and the Robert Kraft, Kraft didn't back down on Trump until he had to, right? Neither did Brady. They were all in on Trump as of last week until Alabama. Now they kind of have to be all in because of the guy that they're handing the ball off to or passing the ball to. And again, all of this is going to fall on the Harbaughs and the Tomlins to manage this inside of their own clubhouses. And, there are going to be 32 different ways of doing this in 32 different places. But I think that's a real challenge behind this for all of these coaches as to how their teams react and interact amongst themselves when they go to work and go to play football on Sunday.
And that's why I think Tomlin wanted to be unified, why he wanted to make sure his team was unified. They were all on the same page. From what the players told us, this meeting was a lot of guys spoke up, and they got a lot of things out in the open, and they were able to discuss it through. Listen, I think for a microcosm on society, an NFL locker room is intriguing, because you have guys coming from all different walks, all different parts of the country, socioeconomic backgrounds, and they find a way to come together or not to a common goal. And it's a great example of how, you look at the Steelers offensive line, you got a couple guys from Florida, you've got a guy from California, you have an Army Ranger, and at least this past week you had a guy from Alabama. If not Alabama, you have a guy from Tennessee, snapping it to a white guy from Ohio with an African-American from Ohio behind him. You got a wide receiver from Miami. And my point is they're coming from all of other places, and they find a way to make it work. And they're able to get along and celebrate and sorrow and everything that works with it. If it could be used the right way as an example, it would be a really good example for society. But what we're finding is nobody knows exactly what to do. You know what I'm saying? It's like they don't know how to handle this. Everybody's doing these different things, and unfortunately, some of it's been taken the wrong way.
He is Jeff Hathorn. He does sports radio as the sports director at 93.7 The Fan up in Pittsburgh. That's KDKA.com. If you want to find him out on Twitter, he is J Hathorn. That's HATHHORN. For the teams, and certainly for the Ravens, I mean, maybe not so much the Steelers because they were in a game there and lost and got tested and all that. But the Ravens were losing 44-0 after doing this on Sunday morning, 5 time zones away in front of 20,000 fans, including me, that all got on airplanes and went over there last week. And now we find they lose Brent Urban. We don't know what the status of Brandon Williams is. We know Marshall Yonder's not around. Joe Flacco with a week of statistics so horrific that I dare not repeat it on the radio this week. And yet the Steelers did this united thing that wasn't united, and Villanueva has to answer all these questions, but the real questions are, they both lost last week, man. Losing in this league is hard enough for these guys without bringing the politics into the locker room, right?
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it led to the Steelers being a little flat at the beginning, but their offense has been incredibly underwhelming. They were expected to be, if not the best, one of the best, not only in the AFC, but in the NFL. Antonio Brown, Martavis Bryant, Le'Veon Bell, Ben Roethlisberger, a veteran offensive line, all signed and back. The only position where they really had inexperience was tight end, but they got Vance McDonald from San Francisco and brought him over, and wow, they were going to light the world on fire. And if only their defense could catch up. And through the first 3 weeks, man, their offense has been bad, and Roethlisberger stunk yesterday. I mean, I know not to the level, I know Flacco really struggled in England, but Ben was bad. I mean, against a Bears defense, yeah, they have a decent front seven, but their secondary can be had, and Roethlisberger couldn't take it. They just didn't get the job done. They let that defense out on the field, and eventually they got worn out and run over. And that's the issue with the Steelers. As much as they have some things on defense that aren't quite right yet, their offense has been underwhelming. We talked to our Steeler insider who compared Le'Veon Bell to Jonathan Dwyer. He said he's just not a special running back right now. Will it come? You would think it would come, but it hasn't shown up in the first 3 weeks. And if they don't have Le'Veon Bell, they're a just above average football team. I mean, Le'Veon Bell, not meaning away from the team, but if he's on the team and not special, they're not that great.
In the case of Roethlisberger and the unity part of this thing, then the reports come out on Monday that he was sorry that he actually stuck with it. It's a fascinating dynamic because I do think of the Steelers as being a good football team. I am a little shocked that they laid a turd against Chicago. I'm not shocked the Ravens put a turd on in London for all the above reasons. The flight, the offensive line, the defensive line, they couldn't stop the run. Things go wrong. Things snowball. Quarterback's no good that day. Offensive line's a mess. You lose, okay. But Pittsburgh losing to Chicago and then the aftermath of the Villanueva, Tomlin, Roethlisberger thing, I think there's more drama there than there really is in losing 44-0 where they just got hustled. If I were a Steelers fan, I would be a little worried about whatever the combustibility is of the Roethlisberger situation, as well as an aging veteran guy who, talks about retiring too much for my taste, right?
Well, that's the issue. It's the aging quarterback that's on the downslide of his career. That it's not as much the other. I think the other stuff will work out, especially since it's Baltimore week. And the Steelers, even though they've been good, have struggled in Baltimore over the last few years, and it's been a hell of a rivalry for the last 2 decades. So they know what Baltimore week is all about, and I think that will help them get past the other stuff because they've announced they're going to go out. They're all going to stand. They've, in their mind at least, kind of put that behind them. But the issue is when Roethlisberger goes on the road, he is an average NFL quarterback. And they need more from him. I don't know if there's more for him to give. I just think at this point in his career, he's no longer an elite quarterback. He's a good quarterback. He's really good at home, and he's average on the road. And the Steelers have to find a way to overcome Roethlisberger because he is not the special guy that he used to be.
Are you going to give me that Antonio Brown's their best football player? Would you concur with that, Jeff?
Yes, and their hardest worker.
Okay, then who's number 2? I mean, is it Shazier at this point? Because it might not be Roethlisberger and it might not be Le'Veon Bell, right? I mean, we think of all of those guys in some sort of elite terms because we've seen them be there. Who's playing elitely now for the Pittsburgh Steelers? I would have told you Brent Urban was a real comer for the Ravens, and now with his Lees Frank, he's not around anymore. But I'm wondering who the young guys that have looked good through 3 games.
Well, if not Shazier, then Cam Hayward. Hayward struggled a little bit against the Bears, but they were doubling him a lot. But Cam Hayward can be a difference maker on that D-line. Shazier can force turnovers. He's got a dynamic and speed defensively. And, I think Marquise Pouncey is a guy on that offensive line. When he's healthy, the guy can motor down the field. He really leads that group. And, they didn't have Marcus Gilbert. They lost Ramon Foster on that offensive line early in the game against the Bears, and I'm sure that factored in. But I wouldn't say that Lev Bell, as he is right now, probably isn't top 10 as far as Steeler players.
Boswell, believer?
Yeah, he's not like the Ravens kicker.
Well, I mean, we got this automatic thing going on here that I think we do take for granted to some degree. Yeah,
Boswell's good. The Steelers have been through a few kickers, and they feel like they've got a guy that they can believe in. And I think Boswell's pretty solid. He's been pretty good. I mean, he kicks in a really bad place to kick. He never makes excuses. He always owns up, and the guys seem to like him. So I think Boswell. I think Boswell's a good NFL kicker, maybe a little bit better than that.
Well, and the division has played out very strangely, certainly for Marvin Lewis, I would say, that we're all licking our wounds and not feeling so good this week. And certainly the way we got our ass kicked over in London, nobody can feel good about that. And obviously, Steelers are expected to go to Chicago and win, didn't. But, the rest of the division, nobody's coming to get these guys, right? So, that makes this game even all that more important heading into Pittsburgh week. And the reason I'm here because the Bengals and Browns have fallen, and they're not going to get up.
No, and I think there's a lot of talent in Cincinnati, and I think they could knock off anybody, but I don't think they're going to put it together week in and week out. So they're not a playoff team, but they're dangerous. The Browns, I thought, were going to not turn a corner, but I thought they'd be better, especially after week one. Thought their defense with Greg Williams, they were going to be more formidable. And, they did come back and make it a game last week, got it within 3 points. And I think DeShone Kizer shows some flashes. They just have no receivers, man. They got nothing on the outside. I think Crowell's a good quarterback or a good running back. They've got a good line. I thought Cleveland was going to win 5-6 games this year, but that just seems like foolishness right now. They're just another Cleveland football team, and it's hard to believe that Hugh Jackson, for everything that people have said about him and how great he was expected to do, he's won one game.
For you with the Steelers, how many wins this year? What is your real expectation now that you've seen this thing go, right? Like, it's one thing to talk about it for 8 months because you and I sit around here and do that before the draft, after the draft, before free agency, after the signing period, during combines, during mini camps before that. And then they actually, go out and play, and you are where you are. It's no longer where your depth chart was back in April. For the Ravens, all of those cats are gone, dude. We've had 17 guys now around here who are no longer around anymore. Going back to the John Urschels and the Alex Lewises and the Tavon Youngs and the Dennis Pittas. And, it's really been a body bag season for this franchise here. And I think our expectations at 2-0 were, well, maybe they'll win 10 games. After you're losing 44-0 over in London, you're like, well, can we get to 8? Can we just have a life after Thanksgiving? Let us survive our trips to Green Bay and Nashville and Oakland and Minnesota, which are our upcoming road games, over the next 5-6 weeks here. This is, the Ravens are going to lose some football games. I think, none of us are shocked about that. I think 44-0 and that sort of a hurting that got laid on them really was eye-opening for us around here.
I think for the Steelers, I predicted 11 to start the season. I'll back it to 10 right now, just having watched them play, just because I thought their offense was going to be something special, and it hasn't been. I think Le'Veon Bell will turn the corner. I do think some of what he's going through is rust, and that he will knock that off eventually and be a special player for them. And I still think they'll win football games, but they've got some tough ones too. They've got New England. They've got Kansas City. They've got Green Bay. I think a game at Detroit that could be a challenge for them because they still have some issues in the secondary with Matt Stafford up there. So I would say they're a 10-win football team. They're still a winning team. I think they're still a division-winning team, but they've shown some more cracks in the dam that I don't think people expected when the season started.
Well, as long as the 11 wins down to 10 comes at the hands of the Ravens this week, if that's the differentiator, it certainly would make life around here a lot more fun in the coming weeks. Because, again, I know the Ravens are going to lose some football games here coming up, and starting to pad things and holding serve at home would go a long way. Certainly for the Ravens to lose this game this week, and they are banged up beyond belief. If they lose this game, the expectations then are, well, can you win 9 games and win 9 games get you to a wild card? Because if you're going to lose this game here to the Steelers this week and go to 2-2 and have to go out to Oakland next week, I think it changes the complexion of the season for both of these franchises this week. A win really elevates you back up into thinking they're going to win 11 games, right? A loss, and you're just hoping for 10 and the Ravens don't get to 9, right?
Yeah, and I think for the Steelers, listen, I get tired of this because we all jump into these cliches at times about key games and important games and all this stuff this early in the season. It's game number 4, but it's a road game where the Steelers have struggled against a team that I'm sure they're going to be favored to beat. So how do they react after a bad loss in Chicago? If they go down and make it 2-2 on the season, where's their head going to be when they face Jacksonville at home and then have to go to Kansas City and have some of their tougher games and a lot of prime time games on the schedule coming up. I think if they get to 3-1, they maybe get some swagger back, and you could see them get back to, as you mentioned, that 11 wins. They could get them going. If they lose, I wonder what kind of confidence, especially when they go on the road, that this team is going to have.
Yeah, 3-1 provides swagger. Somebody's going to have that after this weekend's game on Sunday. He is Jeff Hathorn. He is Jay Hathorn. That's Hathhorn. He's the sports director at 93.7 The Fan. Follow him out on Twitter as well as at KDKA. Jeff, always a pleasure, man. We'll see you on Sunday, all right?
All right, man. Take care.
Tell Mr. Rooney to send the cookies down, okay? They're good up there.
Will do.
He bought me Christmas dinner last year, Mr. Rooney did. You can find me out in the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world on your mobile device. Just download, click away. It's all there for you. Planet Fitness provides our morning newspaper, which we ship to you digitally each and every morning at 7 a.m. It's all powered up by Planet Fitness and planetfitness.com. You can learn more at planetoftriumphs.com out on the web. And 25 cents to join, $10 a month. You can't beat Planet Fitness. Last but never least, breaking news happens first on our WNST tech service. That's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Dennis Kolotzis will be here on Thursday, driving you home from 3 until 5. It is the SSV on WNST, and Dennis had some pointed conversation in regard to taking a knee and the flag. I'm sure he'll have more to say about that on Thursday. You can go check him out at the SSV on WNST on Twitter as well. I am Nasty at WNST.net. We're winding down the Orioles. We're getting ready for baseball playoffs. Terps, not so good last weekend, and obviously the quarterback, and talk about injuries to the Ravens. We'll talk about injuries with the Terps. Caps get it going next week as well, and the Orioles off-season, what I'm sure is silence, is about to come for the next month. I am Nestor, out on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook, as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. And we are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.